If you are a Vite user and your testing framework is Jest, you are making your life more difficult than it needs to be. So sit down, get comfortable while I'll tell you all about Vitest, the native test runner for Vite. So why Vitest? When Vite came out, it gave developers an easy way to work with ESM imports. ESM imports, or ECMAScript modules, are a way to use import statements in your front-end code, knowing that the browser will load the code as needed. This is a better alternative to common Jest. Vite comes with this feature built in for your front-end code. It simplifies and speeds up rendering. What Vite lacked is a native test runner. This is where Vitest comes in. Vitest aims to offer an ESM native alternative to Jest. What do I mean with this? Well, if you are using Vite and Jest, you basically have two pipelines. One for the build and a second pipeline for testing. Because Jest does not support ESM imports, we need to convert this into common Jest for testing, which required us to add extra components like Babel and configure them, and then configure Jest to make the transformations on change. This all adds up in complexity, in time to get the results. The main problem is that the code we are testing is not the same code we are deploying. This is not the best way to test your code. Vitest integrates with Vite using the same pipeline, plugins, and configuration. Vitest simplifies and speeds up testing by reducing the complexity of your setup. You no longer need to maintain, configure Babel and Jest, and have a second tsconfig just to run some tests. Vitest supports a wide array of features, as I already said, ESM import, top-level awaits. We have workspaces for using more repos, an ecosystem of plugins, TypeScript and GSX support, a GUI dashboard for viewing your tests. You have in-source testing, which means you can have the test on the same file as the code, coverage report, Jest-compatible snapshots, and an experimental browser mode that allows you to do in-browser testing using WebDriver or Playwright. So let's see Vitest in action. I have created a new Vite project. I use npm create Vite. This is vanilla.js and we are using TypeScript. The example project includes a greeting page with a counter component, and that's pretty much it. The first step is to install Vitest. We are going to do an npm install. So next we are going to package.json. We are going to add a test command, which is Vitest. So let's create our counter.test.ts. Vitest will look for test code inside files with name test or spec. First, let's import our counter. This is the module that comes with the demo project. It's simply a counter that increments by 1 each time the button is pressed. Next, we import from Vitest the keywords. These are the test keywords we normally use also on Jest, so Jest user will be very familiar with this. Let's start a describe block with one button, and we're going to run before each test, get the element from the DOM, and run the setup counter to initialize the button to 0. Let's create our first test. We're going to check that the button value is 0. Let's try to click on the button. This test will simulate a click and check that the count is 1. And finally, let's do 3 clicks. We're going to get the button and click on it 3 times and check that the value is 3. So let's try our test, npm test. We see 2 things. First, that the test failed because the document element is not defined. We're going to fix that next. The other thing is that Vitest by default starts in watch mode, meaning that it will watch for changes and automatically rerun the test when something changes. So let's go back to the code and fix the error. To fix the error, we need to configure Vitest to import DOM elements. We are going to create a new file called vite.config.js. Next, we import define config from Vite, and we initialize the defined config with test environment JSDOM. This will import the DOM elements into all the tests. Let's save the file. If we go back to the console, we see that Vitest has detected a change and rerun the test, and this time the test has passed because document is defined. If you get a message saying that JSDOM is not installed, we can install it with npm, and this will fix the error. So as you can see, we are using the Vite config. We have one config for Vite and for Vitest. All the test properties are inside the test key in the define config. So we have one pipeline to build, to render, and to test our code. Now let's try in-source testing. This is a feature that is inspired from Rust and it's quite unique to Vitest. We're going to take all this code, the test code, and put it on the same file where the code is. So we're going to have one file with the code and the test. So first we're going to import the test keywords, and then we're going to use if import meta Vitest, meaning that this is a test instance. So everything that goes here will only run when we are running Vitest, not when we are running Vite build or Vite preview. Next, we're going to grab all the test code and paste it here inside the if. Let's remove the test file. Now, if you check the console, we see that there are no tests running. This is because Vitest has not looked into the TS or GS file. It's only looking on spec or test files. So we need to modify that. For that, we're going to go to vite.config.js and add include source. So this makes Vite look for test in the source folder. Any JS or TS file is a valid test. If we go back to the test, we see an error here. Vitest is not defined. To fix that, we need to go to tsconfig.json and add the types import meta. This will import all the metadata for Vitest into the source code. Let's save this file and save the Vitest test. Back to the console, we see that Vitest has picked the test from the counter.ts file, meaning that the code and the test are on the same file. This is something of a preference. Some people prefer to have code on separate files, but having the option to have everything in the same file is also an appealing alternative. Now, this test code will only run when invoked from Vitest, but it will still be included in our build. If we run Vite build, this test code will be included in the bundle, which is not what we usually want. To make all this code disappear on the build, we need to go back to vite.config.js, and outside the test key, we're going to define a define key and say that import.meta.vitest is undefined. This will make Vite build our deployable code without the tests. And with all these settings, we are ready to do some in-source testing. Now let's check out a few more features on Vitest. Let's add one command here called test.ci. We're going to run Vitest run. This runs the test only once. It doesn't enter in watch mode. This is important if we're going to run our test in CI, so the process does not wait forever. And let's add one more test, test.gui, where we add Vitest //UI. This will run the test in watch mode and start a browser to show out the test results in an HTML report. Let's test these two features. Test CI will run the test once and go back to the console. Running test GUI will prompt us to install a missing dependency, Vitest UI. Installing that will fix the error. Let's run it again, and this time it's going to run in watch mode and it's going to open a browser. Here's the browser. It shows us the files, the tests, and what tests have failed and passed. We get module grabs, we can see the test code, we can rerun the test from here, or get a summary of all our tests. Now, another feature I want to discuss is retries. Retries is a great way to detect flaky tests. One way to enable retries is to add the retry option in the command line. This will retry failed test up to this number. The other way to enable retries is to go to Vite config and add a retry keyword. We can add the number of retries here. One of the problems with Vitest is that it's not going to alert us when the test fails. It's only going to retry, and it's going to only show us a failure when all the retries have been attempted, and that's kind of a problem because we will miss the flakiness in our test. I have tried to find a fix for this, different command options, different config options. I also tried to create a custom reporter to show in the console when a retry has been attempted and failed, but I have not been able to make it work. If you know the answer, please let me know, because I would really like to use this feature to detect flaky tests in my code. That's all for today. I hope this video made you at least a little bit curious about Vitest. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, follow us for more content. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.